Well, welcome. So happy to be here. I especially want to welcome Stan. Stan's first visit with us. So I'm really happy to have you here, Stan. Thank you. Um, so let's see. Today is June 15th, 2025, in Sawatoto Zen. And I'm the speaker today, so sorry about that. Um, let's see. The thing I want to talk about is so I've been studying with Peter, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and then this book, Not Always So. And this is a collection of lectures that was put together by Ed Brown. And so the reason I've been studying it is because Peter and I are going to teach the class in the fall, and so I thought I should like get up to speed. So I've been focused really on one section that I want to talk about today. Oh, good, Laura's here. So happy. I'm going to put something in the chat. It's a quote from Suzuki, and it's the title of one of these lectures, and it says, "We put the emphasis on warm heart, warm zazen. That's the feeling we have in our practice. In other words, enlightenment or Buddha's mind." So, the book is called Practicing the True Spirit of Zen. And that quotation really landed on me, because I think it's very powerful. It's it's really quite an amazing thing to say that warm heart and warm zazen is enlightenment itself. Cynthia and I got Dharma transmission from Peter in like 2023. And in some way, I feel like, we've inherited like a tradition. And I think we've been trying to kind of embody that like in our own way, like, in the present and as teachers. And I think we actually have a responsibility to pass that along. As they say in 12-step programs, like you can only keep what you have by giving it away. So let's see, Steve's going to get Dharma transmission in about 6 weeks. And we've been doing preparations for that over, I think, for about a year. But the thing that's being transmitted or what I'm passing along is it's not unchanged. Meaning what I received from Peter, the thing about transmission, the only thing I think that's transmitted is very literally the practice, like that practice of sitting, and then an orientation to sitting that's not really about cultivating like particular mind states or trying to get to be a great person or something, but more like acknowledging like all the states of mind that come up and all the parts of yourself. So Peter didn't pass on to me something that wasn't changed from what he got from Norman Fisher. And I don't think I'm passing on to Steve a sort of like a timeless truth, so to speak. I mean, the thing I really think I'm passing on is like sitting and an orientation to sitting. But to my mind, and maybe that's not true for other people, but it feels to me like each successive generation of practitioners has to reinterpret what it means to be Buddhist. I mean, the teachings have changed so dramatically, like over 2,000 years, or the interpretations of the teachings. I'll say it that way. So sometimes people wonder if they're doing Zen Buddhism right. And like, by doing it right, to me, what it means to do right is just like sitting every day and then trying to practice the precepts and then just passing it along. I mean, and often the way people pass it along is that they sort of embody the teachings. Like sometimes it's passed on non-verbally, I think. Like I can think of some teachers and there's just something about them. Like, for example, people in the room, like Patty and Michelle's teacher, Christina Lerner. Like, to me, she just has this quality. Like, there's something about the way she moves and that she's transmitting the teaching and she's not maybe even saying anything. So Buddhism doesn't come with a lot of explicit promises. I mean, I don't think I don't think there's a single sort of set of promises like you get in some religious traditions, like eternal life or heaven. But I do think that there's core aspirations or fruits of practice, or there's teachings that sort of function like promises. Like one, I mean, the kind you could have frame that as being, let's see, what would happen from sincere practice? I mean, well, one thing that Buddhism really suggests is freedom from suffering. I mean, the central teaching of Buddhism is that suffering exists, that suffering has a cause, that suffering could end, and that there would be a path to that end. Like, I think there's a quote from the Buddha: I teach suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. That's all I teach. That's a very ancient quote. I think also that Buddhism implies that everybody has a capacity for awakening, that I mean, if you have ethical living and then you try to get some meditative stability, and that you can awaken to the true nature of reality. I mean, I think Buddhism suggests that all beings have Buddha nature, meaning all beings are Buddhas potentially. It's like ice and water. Apart from water, there's no ice. Apart from beings, there's no Buddhas. I also think that Buddhism says that if you live by vow, that some peace can come to you. Like Darlene Cohen once said to me, I don't think it was to me, she said to a group, your Buddhist vow is like a staff, meaning, it could be really a support in difficult times. Like, if you felt tired or the path was very steep or you're feeling discouraged or confused, it's something to lean on. And also you can think of a staff as being like a part of yourself, like an extension of yourself, like it moves with you. It sort of balances you. And so that kind of vow becomes a part of who you are. And that's an expression of some deep part of yourself that is really everybody carries, but not everybody's aware of it. I also think that Buddhism suggests that that who you think you are isn't exactly fixed, but that if you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, that you're stepping into some process of transformation. But also, what about Suzuki's teaching and what I'm trying to say here today is that I don't think we're here to create some idealized version of ourselves and then push all the parts of ourselves away that we think we don't like. Like I came to practice with kind of that approach. Like, I was, teenage druggie, and, I mean, I've been clean and sober for 39 years, but I approached Zen Buddhism a lot like I approached drugs. Like I didn't want to be me. And so, I thought if I sat more, I would have to be me. I could meditate to fix myself in that way. Like, and the assumption was I'm broken and meditation's going to fix me. I don't think meditation does that. I also thought meditation would calm me down all the time. And like if I meditated enough then I wouldn't feel anxious or angry, or I wouldn't feel sad. And then, but what meditation actually did the opposite for me, meaning that sometimes it made me feel even more uncomfortable than I expected. And now I know that's sort of part of the process. I also thought meditation would take my pain away, that it would, erase all these bad feelings I had, like grief or trauma or shame or, humiliation, or, had a lot of stuff. But meditation doesn't really do that. But I do think it sort of transforms the way you sit with those things. Like, and that's very deep healing, I think. I also thought that meditation would be about like clearing your mind. Like I could slow my thoughts down and eventually I would just stop thinking entirely. And then that doesn't happen, believe me, but it does. But one thing about meditating is that it's not that you stop your thoughts, but you just stop believing them. Like there's that quote, like we don't invite them in for tea. So, and then also I think I thought that the practice would be very linear. like I was going to get better and better at meditation, and that, I was going to get more and more concentration, and then it was going to be the boomies, and I was going to be higher and higher, and then I wouldn't have to be me anymore. Like, believe me, that didn't happen. Like my progress in meditation is like regressive, meaning that, or it's like going in a circle or something. Like, but what progress means to me now is just showing up over and over again and trying to be sincere about it. So, I wanted to be somebody special. I wanted to have mystical experiences. I thought I could control what would happen in meditation, and that, none of that happened. I mean, meditation's not about control, it's more about surrender, and that the practice of just coming back again and again, no matter what comes up, that's what it's like for me anyway. But sort of facing all of those things with honesty was sort of the real work for me. So, what I've come to find out, like in my practice, it might be different for other people, but Zazen really asked me to look at the parts of myself that I came to practice to kind of get rid of. Like, I didn't want to feel vulnerable. I didn't want to feel anxious. I didn't want to be angry at people. I didn't want to be horny. I mean, and then none of that happened. That was a delusion that I actually had to learn to let go of. So one of the things I think Suzuki's getting at is that the practice gives you a way to look in the mirror, and then you say, okay, well, these are all the parts of me, and the practice can help me to accept those parts. Sometimes when you read like Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, I mean, Suzuki really does focus on things like, correct posture and following your breath and staying in this moment. But the thing I like about this section was that he really points to warmth, this feeling, this kind of atmosphere, like a presence. And that's a very different kind of instruction that I'd never received from like many teachers before. But I think it's actually deeply Zen. I'm not sure what other people feel like how they feel when they sit. I mean, maybe you feel like you're doing something that's very important, or maybe you feel like you're doing it wrong, or maybe you're just numb, or maybe you're just trying to get through the next 30 minutes, or maybe it changes all the time. But what he's offering is that the emphasis is on warm heart, warm zazen, and this feeling that if you take care of your life and your practice, that's actually enlightenment. I think that's very radical. I mean, let's see. Some people come to Zen Buddhism with this idea that enlightenment is like, you're stone-faced, Zen master, and you're sitting in perfect stillness, and you never feel any pain, and you live on the top of a high mountain, and you're untouched by emotion. But actually, Suzuki's saying that it isn't that. It isn't about perfection. It's about intimacy. And then it's not about becoming someone else through like striving or self-judgment or criticism. It's about this kind of zazen that welcomes us like as we are, not as we wish we might be. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I've certainly seen some Zen Buddhists that weren't very nice to themselves. I've seen some very competitive Zen students, and I've seen some people that, approach the practice almost like an athleticism, kind of one-upmanship, skill sets of Zen Buddhism. And in my own practice, I found myself criticizing myself, like I can't concentrate, or my posture's not right, or I'll never be as accomplished as whoever I was comparing myself to. But that inner commentary, that's not the voice of Dharma. I mean, I don't think the practice is about like improving yourself, but I think it's more about softening around what's already you, like acceptance in some way. I mean, there's that famous phrase, I think Suzuki said it, when you become you, Zen becomes Zen. So instead of pushing through the practice, it's more like you're letting yourself be held by it in some way. Like to me, warm zazen it's like spacious enough that it could include, all of those parts, like the ways I'm tensed up, or when I'm feeling confused or, I'm kind of tearful or, feeling a lot of fatigue from sitting. I mean, I think Suzuki's saying that it's okay to be tender with yourself. It caused me to think about, like most of my life, I had this idea that if I was just harder on myself, I'd finally become good. Like if I just kept, I could hate myself into being a better person. If I just applied a little more pressure, a little more self-criticism, felt a little more shame, then eventually I was going to break through and be somebody that was like good in some way. But it's like trying to carve a Buddha statue by hitting yourself with a hammer or something. I guess my hope was that like by force or by judgment or strength of will or just relentless striving that then something holy was going to emerge from me. But it doesn't seem like that's the way it works. In fact, it's the opposite of the way it works. That inner critic is really a false teacher. Like it comes on like it's a teacher, like it's your coach or your conscience or your friend, but it's really not. I mean, it's the internalized voice of trauma, of fear, of abandonment, you know. And so I think Suzuki's saying that in our practice, we get to sit with ourselves just like a friend, like a loving parent. Like you don't have to become something better in order to be enlightened. When he says, when you become you, Zen becomes Zen, it's kind of cuts through this whole idea of self-improvement or spiritual ambition. And he really flips the script. Instead of being that, it's more about being who you already are. And that warmth would really be what's transformative, and that you can't become whole by rejecting some parts of yourself. So when you sit and even, the messy parts or the wounded parts or the ways you feel awkward, and then if not trying to fix those things, but just sort of soften around them, you can stop being at war with yourself. And then that in itself would be liberation. So that feeling of warmth, it's not a weakness. He's saying that that's an expression of Buddha's mind, and that's how transformation really happens. Um, let's see. That kind of feeling of warmth, um, I don't think it's something that you can achieve in some way. Like, I don't think you can generate it like from your mind, like on purpose. But I do think that it can come up when you kind of surrender and stop trying to control everything and sort of stop resisting yourself. And then that kind of warmth can be like a glow, kind of like sunlight, like in the mist. Like that's really Buddhist compassion flowing through you. That sort of, if they say all beings have Buddha nature, it's like this original kindness of this very life, like your natural integrity could arise because you had healthy respect for yourself and for the people around you. Let's see. The last thing I want to say is, we practice for all beings. Like that kind of warmth, it's not just for you. Like when you practice and you try to have, a warm heart, you're also practicing for everybody else, because we live in a world in which, so many people are cold-hearted and wounded and guarded or numb. And I just feel like every act of tenderness matters in the world. So when you sit like that with warmth, it touches the world around you, like you're a refuge. I mean, it's not just that it's okay to love yourself. You can attend to your practice. And he's saying that that is the enlightened mind of Shakyamuni revealing itself to you. And you could just feel that right here, right now from the practice of sitting. Whew. Never got comfortable with speaking. That's all I'm going to say. So why don't we just, thank you. Why don't we sit for a minute together, a little bit, and then see if we can feel that warm feeling of Zazen, and then sort of share it with each other, and then we'll have a little discussion at the end. Let's see.